Against Lazio tomorrow in Italy. We'll also be looking back at the final round of matches in Spain. Heartbreak for Leganés. Meanwhile, Lionel Messi continues to break more records. Plus, will Farron, whether or not his helmet made any difference to LAFC completely dominating that second half in El Tráfico. We'll start, though, in England, where the lineup is set for this year's FA Cup final. It will be Arsenal against Chelsea. After Frank Lampard's side beat Manchester United by 3-1. Here to reflect on that, Shaka, Hislop, Nicol and Craig Burley. Craig, I really enjoyed yesterday's semi-final, but today just felt so flat.
You enjoyed yesterday's semi-final?
It was good, it was intense, both teams going for it, but the changes you felt that both teams made, in particular United, just kind of took the wind, I thought, out of the excitement of this game.
Well, they went for it in team selection, certainly Arsenal, but they didn't go for it in terms of performance. Shaka sweating up there more than what Man City were at times in the game. But, at the end of the day, he's not allowed to have his fan on. At the end of the day, Solskjaer made a decision, and he left some of the big hitters out, and he changed the shape of the team, and it's been a front three that's been operating really well. In fact, Stevie mentioned in the week against Crystal Palace, it was the difference between the sides and getting the 3 points at Selhurst Park. He has got games coming up. He did have 48 hours less rest, which he rammed down everybody's throat, including his own players, who, by the way, looked as if some of them had given up at the end. There's no doubt about that. But the big thing for me as well was he's played a goalkeeper in the cup competitions, and then he left him out as well. I mean, what kind of signal was that sending out? I'm not playing my strongest team, but I'm not playing my goalkeeper that's played in the cup competitions. I'm going to go back to David De Gea, who had another stinker. So it was a real mess for Manchester United.
OK, let's start then with the goalkeepers. You brought it up. Shaka, De Gea at fault for both of the goals?
Well, the second in particular. Could have done better with the first.
Aspirations, looking towards the Champions League if they qualify next season. David De Gea is going to prove to be a big problem, isn't he?
Well, he hasn't been in the greatest of form. He certainly was awful today. But they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. What do? You can't go and spend a ton of money on a proper goalkeeper and pay this guy the amount of money that he's got. They're just going to have to hope that the goalie coach can work with him and try and build his confidence back up and try and lift him and try and do something similar to what they've done with Pogba. The time we were talking about Pogba needs to leave, he will leave, he should leave, the team's no good with him in it, and they've turned that around. It's going to have to be something as big to turn David De Gea around as well, because right now, every time there's a shot at goal, you're wondering whether he can actually stop it, regardless of how hard it is or where it is.
Or you just bring in Henderson, Craig.
Yeah, you bring him back from Sheffield United, we'll be coming back anyway, but then you're still stuck with a couple of players, one of them in Alexis Sanchez, who's on reportedly $500,000 a week, and you just mentioned somewhere around 400,000 a week. I mean, even for Manchester United, that's a heck of a lot of dough for a couple of players that are not going to be playing, whatever happens with Sanchez come the transfer window. So I think they're going to have to work with it for the time being. But look, Lampard stuck with his thought process in terms of he plays Willy Caballero in goal in the cup competitions, but he only made one. Okay, he changed the shape of the team, but he only left out one key player, and that arguably has been their best player in Christian Pulisic,
who he said had
all
a
the
bit
other
of a
guys
knock
more or
going
less
into
have
this
been
game.
playing. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer left out Pogba, Martial, and Greenwood. That's been the hub of what Manchester United have been good at. That slick passing play, that link up with Fernandes. And he made that big decision because they're prioritising the top four, it seems. I mean, I'm sure everybody's prioritising the top four, easy for me to say. But they've got West Ham, who are safe at home in midweek. I mean, come on. This just says to me again, and I'll reiterate this for those Man United fans that just can't stomach me saying it, there is and will be, in my opinion, until proven otherwise, next year, when it comes to the crux fighting Liverpool and Man City, a question mark over this manager. And that remains, not just on today's result, but as a generalisation. And until he proves otherwise at this club, and toppling those clubs that I mentioned, that question mark's not going to go away.
There's no question. He was laying the groundwork for playing a weekend side today. And I don't get why you do that. You end up bringing all those so-called superstars on, play them for an hour, win the game, and then take them off. I don't know how many times I've said it. And actually, if Ollie sat in his office and said to himself, right, how can I make a mess of this? Because you know what? We're flying. Nobody wants to play against us. We're scoring goals. Everything's great. Everybody's got a smile on their face. I know what I'll do. I'll play half a team, get it completely misjointed by changing the shape, and that should work well. And that's what he did. I'm sorry. Football clubs should be all about the result on the field. And to do that, you put your best team out. You don't try and be clever. And players and teams thrive on winning games and scoring goals. They don't thrive on losing semi-finals of the FA Cup and having an absolute disaster. And then on top of it, your so-called #1 goalkeeper has a complete and utter shocker.
As Craig and Stevie say, Shaq, they've got West Ham, who are safe, who are already on the beach, who are happy. They know they're going to be in the Premier League next season on Wednesday at Old Trafford. This is a game that Manchester United should turn up and win comfortably. Today was a proper game, a chance to get into the final, a chance for Ollie to silence Craig and say, look, I've won the FA Cup, and then we have that to pay. But at least you're giving it a go. The changes that you made, you knew were going to have an effect, and they did right from the start.
Look, the Oakham playing Manchester United teams of old would have gone into this game to win it. Whether they did or not, the manager would have given them a chance to do that. Added to everything that both Craig and Stevie just said, keep in mind, he has 5 substitutes at his disposal. So play a stronger team. And if the game is won, if you're 2 up after an hour, you can make 5 changes and have an even better effect on this team in terms of their rest for the running. But you start the week off by offering the excuse that you have 48 hours less rest than Chelsea and making a big song and dance about that, giving the team an excuse to lose. Then you make the changes, in formation, and you lose. Now you have David De Gea going into the run-in with absolutely no confidence. You've got Sergio Romero, who's looking for the exit doors as quickly as he can find it. He's not going to be happy, not that he would have been called on between now and the end of the season anyway. And you've got everybody else in the dressing room looking around at each other, wondering, well, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? I mean, added to the mistakes with De Gea, and I think you saw it, especially after the second 2 steps back, when, as much as they're still very much in pole position as compared to Leicester in qualifying for the top 4, I think today's performance, the formation, has done more harm than good.
Dan, I expect United to beat West Ham. I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't. But sometimes when you get yourself safe in the Premier League, you don't go on the beach. You sort of play with a bit more freedom. And listen, if they, and it's a big if, but if they were to drop points or if they were to lose to West Ham at home, he's left the door open for people and United fans to say, well, that's the game we lost momentum. The semi-final of the FA Cup was the game when we lost that bit of momentum that we had garnished over the period since Christmas time and obviously since the restart. Because when the hell did a semi-final of an FA Cup become the time to make so many changes in the side? It really does beg our belief. And he's came unstuck in this one. It might work out for him in the end, but who knows?
Let's give some credit to Chelsea. Craig mentioned it. Frank Lampard putting out a relatively strong side. Pulisic rested, of course, because of an injury. But overall, by far the better team, despite the mistakes that we saw from United.
Chelsea weren't particularly great, by the way. I'll tell you, it was a toss of a coin who wanted to pass the ball to the opposition. You'll take it.
Frank Lampard, now it looks set, obviously very much a favourite to qualify for the Champions League and an FA Cup final, Craig. I imagine many would have taken that at the start of the season.
Well, you say that, Dan, but the permutations for Frank Lampard are not that simple. Liverpool and Wolves are the 2 games to come. Would not be a shock if they were to take no points from those games. I mean, it just wouldn't. That's how much that is in the balance. When you look at the other side of the coin,
not playing Liverpool, are they? They're not playing Liverpool. They're playing Liverpool. You know, you look at what we've seen in Liverpool over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, it's a very different team.
Yeah, but it's still a Liverpool side that is better than this Chelsea side. And look, the worst thing that might have happened to Chelsea was Liverpool's lacklustre, sloppy performance at Arsenal, because I'm sure Klopp, while sort of brushing it under the carpet a little bit, would be saying, hey, let's not be having any more mistakes. I mean, don't expect Van Dijk and Alisson to make the same mistakes if they play. So that's all I'm saying. They're not playing a couple of sides in the bottom 3. They're playing Wolves, still going for European places. They're playing Liverpool, who's looking for a reaction. And that means they're going to have to, I think, at least win one of those games. So it's not cut and dry. So the onus was on him today, really, if you're thinking about it that way. He should have been the man who left more players out than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because they have a more difficult run-in. But he didn't. So he's got himself to a cup final in his first season with a transfer ban. I'll mention that again, just for those who don't understand it. And they're still fighting for the top 4. But that top 4, I think, is going to go right down to the wire.
Well, just a reminder, as a result of what we saw today play out between Spurs and Leicester, for Chelsea, it's simple. A victory against either Wolves or Liverpool will see them qualify for the Champions League next season. For Manchester United, it's a win against West Ham and then avoiding defeat against Leicester City, and then we could go down to the goal differential. It's interesting, isn't it? I think January 31st, Leicester City were 12 points ahead of Manchester United, Stevie. Yet Leicester have been in pretty much free fall, epitomised by another poor display today.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought the shutdown was going to benefit them because they were struggling to get wins, certainly. But when they restarted, they weren't any better. And then you add the injuries they have. I mean, today against Tottenham, you know, they had 3 of their back 4 missing. You know, Chilwell, Pereira, and of course Sunshao getting suspended. I mean, they can't afford to have anybody missing. You throw Maddison into that, him not playing, and then you've got young players coming in. So free fall is exactly the word. And you're talking about Chelsea having to try and get something at Wolves and Liverpool. I mean, I can't see how Leicester get anything against Manchester United. So I think it's going to be tough for Leicester to get in the top 4.
Shaka, it just feels like Leicester are trying to hold on to a ledge and they just can't get one at the moment.
Yeah, and the fingers started to slip from before the break. And the challenge that I felt coming out of the enforced break is that when you have teams like Leicester and Sheffield United, who are, or certainly had been, greater than the sum of their parts, you're not quite sure what you're going to get when you come out the other side of that break. And you've seen both of those teams struggle and be inconsistent. And you feel sorry for Leicester in that circumstance. Don't have the resources to compete with the others around them, yet have done so well to be in the position that they're in. But I'm with Craig and Stevie. As good as the first part of the season has been, and as disappointing as this second bit has been coming out of the break, I think it finishes up in heartbreak for them. I don't see how they stay top 4.
Of course, they do face though United on the final day of the season, and given what happens in that match against West Ham, Craig, it could be winner takes all time. Yeah,
and look, the only stat that matters is the stat. It says, you know, Tottenham 3, Leicester 0. And we've always said that. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. But you look at the actual match stats, and bearing in mind the injuries that Stevie mentioned, and for long periods since the restart, they've really struggled without the full-backs, particularly the right-back. And that's been an issue for them. But, you know, 70% possession with half a team at Tottenham with 24 efforts on goal tells you it wasn't actually a terrible performance going forward. But they got cut open at the back when Tottenham hit them on the counter. So they're going to have to get as many of these players back. But listen, United are not infallible. We've seen that. They've been on a great run, but I think it has papered over some of the cracks. And we saw some of those cracks today, even though they've made changes. It would not be a big surprise if it comes down to the last game of the season if either of those sides took the points, because Leicester are a decent side. They've just hit a problematic period, and it's up to Brett. It has to be hard for Harry Kane not to be having a peek out the window and seeing some of those big clubs and who's going to be looking for him. And he has to be interested. He surely has to be interested in a move away this summer. And I would be surprised if a few bids don't.
5 points clear in the end of Barcelona. Atleti, meanwhile, in third. Level of points with Sevilla. Confirmation then, Leganés relegated, as were Mallorca today, joining Espanyol in the Segunda next season. Was an anti-climax, 8 goals, brilliant game.
It really was. I mean, we're talking about two separate halves, though, right? Because in that second half, LAFC just showed their quality. They showed the gap between them and their city rivals. And this is with no Carlos Vela. It's pretty scary to think that without their best player, without the MVP of the MLS, they were still able to take it to the Galaxy the way they were. 4 goals in that second half. It really was a majestic performance by LAFC.
A bad night for Galaxy. Got even worse, of course, with news that Chicharito is out for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, and we saw him actually walk right by us pregame. He was in the stands. Noticeable limp, barely putting any weight on that right foot and right leg. But let me tell you something. He was really into the game, which I think is good to see, right? It's a Mexican soccer star, one of the biggest soccer stars in the world, and he was so into that game, screaming at the officials. He was barking commands to his teammates. So he was really into it, the loudest voice by far on the bench. It was good to see, but obviously we want to see him on the pitch rather than off of it.
Just away from the tournament, Stefano, obviously news over the last 48 hours that those expansion sides will have to wait a year now as a result of the COVID outbreak. I'm just wondering what the reaction has been to MLS representatives that you've been speaking to.
I think that it was everyone in MLS understood that this was a very necessary step to take. There are a lot of teams that just aren't ready. I mean, Charlotte isn't ready. St. Louis wasn't going to be ready in time. Sacramento, the same thing. And I feel like it was necessary with everything that we've been living in 2020, how everything's kind of been pushed back. It was a necessary a move for MLS to make sure that everybody and all the teams that are going to be coming into the league over the next 4 or 5 years will have everything ready to go when it's time. They don't want to do anything halfway. They want to do it all the way, and that's what we're trying to see here. That was what the move, but MLS wanted to do.
Stefano, considering where I saw you doing your hits from on SportsCenter earlier, you going back on the Swan boat now for the rest of the day?
Yeah, maybe take the rest of my afternoon or evening off on the Swan boats again. Who knows, right?
Hey, beautiful. You could take Taylor out there and just leave him there. Thank you very much there,
yeah,
Stefano.
no one will care.
Much appreciated. Late consolation goal, but Portland making it 2 wins out of 2 now to top Group F. With Ashkan to FC, just reminding the other tie, we'll see the Portland Thorns take on the Houston automatically as champions. There's one more automatic place left, and it's all to play for. They remain 6, close the gap on Perth Glory to 4. And the end of today's programme. Thank you very much to everyone who's been on. Be sure, though, to stay tuned for extra time. Stevie, Craig and Shaka with me. I asked Craig about his high-profile mistake in the FA Cup semi-final.